My name is Willie Martinez. I am a lending assistant, customer service representative for Happy State Bank. The most I love is working with people, and I think that we as a bank, we do that. I think that's our culture. I think they go out and find those individuals that love to interact with individuals and love the conversation and love working and helping out and solving those problems that our customers can have. And I think that the culture, the helpfulness, I think that's what sets us apart.
Hi, may we ask everybody to stand and join me in welcoming Pastor Howard Griffin with the First Presbyterian Church who will do our invocation today. Pastor?
Thank you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, in your word you tell us that unless you build the house, the workers labor in vain. That apart from you we truly can do nothing. So this time together, Lord, we pray that you would build this house, that your will would be done, that you would grant our mayor and our commissioners and all of our city councilmen and everyone involved in our city today the wisdom of Solomon to know exactly what you would have us do. And that every decision that is made today would be according to your will, so that you might receive the glory. We pray that your will would be done here on earth as it is in heaven. In your Son's name we pray. And all God's people said, Amen.
I want to add, of all the preachers that we have that come and lead us in prayer, this one has the most responsibility of any of them. He's my preacher.
So pray for me.
Pastor, you did a fairly good job with him, but we need to talk after. Would you join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Good afternoon and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Amarillo City Commission, held on the third floor of City Hall this Tuesday at 3 p.m. The first item of business on today's agenda is the minutes from the prior meeting. Attached is a copy of those minutes regarding the meeting of January 15th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for approval of those minutes as presented.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7388. This is the first reading of an ordinance changing the zoning of 2 lots in the vicinity of Airport Boulevard and Tilt Road Drive from agricultural district to planned development district for the expansion of existing Bell Helicopter Textron Company operations. This is recommended for approval by a 6-0 vote for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Are there any questions from the audience regarding this? Any from the Commission? If not, I entertain a motion.
I move for approval of ordinance number 7388.
Second. A motion and a second for approval of ordinance number 7388. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7389. This is the first reading of an ordinance changing the zoning of a lot in the vicinity of Glen Oak Lane and Bell Street from light commercial district to heavy commercial district. This is recommended by us for approval by a 6-0 vote of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is there any question about this item from the audience or from the Commission? If not, I entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 7389.
I second.
A motion and a second for ordinance number 7389. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7393. This is the first reading of an ordinance vacating and abandoning a 2.58 acre drainage easement in section 39, block 9, BS&F Survey, Randall County, in the vicinity of Coulter Street and South Bend Road. This is recommended for approval by a 6-0 vote of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is there any question about this item from the audience or from the Commission?
Mr. Mayor, I believe that you accidentally read 7393. It's ordinance 7390.
7390. Thank you for the correction, Commissioner. Any other comments from the audience or commission? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 7390, but there is one small change in the wording of the ordinance. It's in the caption in our packet. It reads Potter County, and actually this is in Randall County. So I move the approval of 7390 with that one small change in wording to make it the right county.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second with a correction of that one item. It's listed correctly in every other place, is it not?
Yes, it is, just in the caption.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7391. This is the first reading of ordinance renaming Stapleton Street to Protect Drive. It's recommended for approval by a 6-0 vote of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is there any explanation from the audience or questions? Any from the commission? If not, I'd entertain a motion. With no such motion, move on to the next item. Resolution public hearing. This is a resolution conducting a public hearing on the and considers ordering the removal of substandard structures located at 1410 South Lincoln Street. We will now conduct a hearing to determine certain properties constitute a nuisance by virtue of dangerous structures and accumulation of weeds, trash, and junk, or some combination of these. Pursuant to city ordinance, the mayor will make the determination as to the procedural and evidentiary questions. And I will now call the case involving 1410 South Lincoln Street. The owner, Amarillo Capital Investment, LP, Marcus Thornton, substandard structures including accumulation of junk and debris. All persons who may desire to speak or give evidence on this matter, please stand and raise your right hand. Now do each of you solemnly swear to affirm that your testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Okay. Take your seats if you would, please. And at this time, we'd like to ask the building official, Mr. McDonald, to present the case.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commission. Thank you. The property located at 1410 South Lincoln will in wood frame construction on a pier and beam foundation. This structure has been vacant for over 15 years and is just recently secured, as seen in the images. Many of the doors and windows have been removed or broken out. There is building and plumbing work done without the proper required permit and inspections. The property is littered with accumulations of junk and debris on the inside. The outside was cleaned by a city contractor in the fall of 2012. There has been minimal attempt by the owner or owners to repair or abate the hazards in many years. This property is not only a nuisance to the community, it presents multiple hazards for its neighbors, creates an unsafe environment, and is dangerous. Demolition is recommended. The beginning date for this file is October of 2012. The initial notice of a dangerous structure was sent via certified mail to Amarillo Capital Investments on December the 10th, 2012. It was delivered on December 19th, 2012. An additional notice was additionally mailed to Amarillo Capital Investments, LP, care of Marcus Thornton, registered agent, December 10th, 2012, and it was delivered on December 19th, 2012. Public notice was sent certified to interested persons, Amarillo Capital Investment, LP, on January the 8th, 2013, not yet returned. Amarillo Capital Investments, care of Marcus Thornton, registered agent, January 8th, 2013, not yet returned. City of Amarillo posted a notice of condemnation hearing on a placard on site on January the 9th, 2013. Permit status on this property. On March 22nd of 2011, an application to repair the structure was submitted. No permit was issued. Building safety has had no recent activity. There was a plumbing permit issued on October 2008 to the previous owner to replace the gas line. Recently, Mr. Marcus Thornton did in fact come into the Department of Building Safety inquiring to the notifications received. Came in on January the 8th, and again on the 18th, and this morning on the 22nd. Current taxes on the property are $477.96 for 2012. No delinquent taxes are present. There has been no water service to this property since September 11th of 1990. Over the past 2 years, this property has been maintained by a city contractor. March the 3rd, 2011, old construction material, junk and debris. September 3rd, 2011, mow and trash removal. August 31st, 2012, mow, junk and debris. Currently, there is $568.61 owed against the city, or owed to the city against this property. This is a file in the business record that we have created and maintained in the ordinary course of business in the Department of Building Safety. The contents were made by or at the direction of a person with personal knowledge thereof at or about the time of the events or conditions reflected therein. The photographs in this file accurately portray what they represent. I tendered this to you as evidence in this matter for the purposes of this hearing. However, because this is the original active file, I request to substitute an electronic version of this file. Such electronic copy is an exact duplicate of the original file that has been secured on the city's IT network under Hummingbird number 204116. May I approach?
Yes, we'd like you to approach. Thank you. The original file is admitted to the record of this hearing, and substantiation of the electronic record is allowed for all other purposes, including the hearing. Commissioners, if you'd like to take a look at this file that's here for a look. And any commissioners that have questions for Mr. McDonald, this would be the time to ask this question.
I have a question. It is apparent to me that there has been quite a bit of work done on this structure. Is that a new roof?
The roof has been there, as you can see documented in the file before you, prior to 2008. So at some point, someone had to put that roof on without permit and inspection. So I can't tell you exactly when that took place, but I can go back as far as 2008, and that roof was in place. The only permitted activity that we had was the previous owner, which was a gas line permit in 2008.
And these windows, there are some new windows, some.
Correct.
Are those permitted, unpermitted?
No permitted work. None that we have any evidence of.
And by our international standards, our replacement windows, do those require a permit to replace windows?
Yes, probably more importantly on this particular structure, because it's been open to the elements, anything in the interior, i.e. the insulation, drywall, wood structural members have deteriorated. Because this building's been open, you'll see photographs in that file that date back to 1985. So it's been somewhat problematic for many years.
I've got a question. You mentioned twice that the city went to clean up the yard and the debris around it. How did that happen? Did neighbors complain, or did the city just notice it, or how does that happen?
That happens in a variety of ways, both complaint and by city inspectors canvassing neighborhoods. And I can't tell you that specifically on those occasions whether there were complaints called in. There was a complaint in 2011, which prompted the initial application for a permit. There was work being conducted on property, and a stop work notice was issued at that time. But beyond that, I don't know any other complaints per se.
Any other questions for Mr. McDonald at this point?
Mayor, I have one, please.
Sir.
Again, it's somewhat evident that there's been some effort made. Did the owner respond to your letters? Did they come in and ask for a provisional permit to continue this rehabilitation?
The owner of the property came in on January the 8th, indicated that he had not received notification from the city. He had visited with my staff regarding the situation. My staff informed him that we have a signed letter from his office that was received on the 19th of December. His indication to me this morning was that he had received that notice from his office staff on January the 5th.
So he came in to argue about the notice, but not to ask for a permit to keep doing the project?
There was no application that was presented before me.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions from the commission or Mr. McDonald at this point?
Maybe later.
Okay, Mr. McDonald, thank you. We'll now hear from persons with a legal interest in the property who were sent notices of such hearing. If said person now fail, refuse, or neglect to appear, they are deemed to have admitted liability to the defects and violations as stated in the initial notice. If there's an owner, occupant, or lien holder of this property present who wants to present pertinent information or to question a building official, would ask them to stand at this point. Sir, do you have legal interest in the property?
Yes, sir.
If you could come forward, you took the oath at the beginning, so there's no need for that. We'd like you to go ahead and present.
Name and address.
Yes, name and address, and present what you have in regards to this.
Okay, sorry. My name is Marcus Thornton. I'm the partner of Emerald Capital Investments LP and the president of Amarillo Capital Management LLC, which is the general partner.
Could you give your address, sir?
Oh, my business or physical?
I don't know that either one is.
Business, 1402 Southwest 10th Street.
Thank you.
Not really sure, never been to one of these, so forgive me in advance. I'm a lender, that's what I do by trade. An investor bought this property, I loaned him the money, they were going to fix up the property. That's how I got involved. He subsequently went bankrupt. I foreclosed and took possession of the property. I'm thinking this was around February of 2011. I had my contractors immediately get on board. That's your March application that he was referencing of 2011 to rehab the property. My understanding was they were going to do some debris removal prior to getting permits. So that's when they had the stop work notice. I told the licensed general contractor, we'll just go get the permits and we'll get ahead of the game. When he attempted to get the permits, they was then told that there's a structural integrity issue with the foundation and you can't go back in there. So at that point, I had to turn it over to a structural consultant, contractor, which I did, and they contacted Thomas and Israel to draw up a foundation repair blueprint at the expense of almost $2,000. We as in the contractor, took this to the city to get permission so they could do the foundation repair so we could move forward with the rehab. He was denied that based upon, at that time, the IRC that they stated this didn't line up with. So
What's IRC?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry. It's like the building code.
International Residential Code.
Okay.
Good. I'm speaking from what I've been told.
And you're saying they told you that that plan that was drawn up didn't line up with
The IRC, exactly, because
so
of
what
that.
Thomas and Israel drew up didn't line up. That's what you're telling us.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me.
They said that at that time, if you wanted to do the foundation work, it had to meet new standards because they didn't have a remodel format. It had to fit this cookie cutter, even though it was stamped by structural engineer. At that point, it was sheer frustration on my part. I was incredibly frustrated. We had already put some windows in because we needed to do something to secure the property, and that's why you see some of the windows there.
And when was this again? This you're talking about right now?
The origin was March or February of 2011.
When you tried to take the
September of 2011.
September.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that went to the city would be either September or October when it actually went to the city. Once denied that, we left the windows that were in place. Through the course of a few months of trying to figure out what I need to do to renovate this property, several windows were busted out of the new windows that were put in to secure the property. So in frustration on my behalf, I yanked the windows out, we put them in storage, and that takes us almost to present day time. Because I didn't know what other course of action I had. Standard time, I get a letter that's in my mailbox. I work in an office. There's 5 different businesses in this office. And the lady at the front signed for a document according to what they stated on December the 19th. I had no knowledge of the letter until January 5th, 6th. That was on a weekend. We were coming back from the holidays. On that Tuesday, the 8th, as he stated, I went in. Now, I don't understand why I would go to their code enforcement office for no reason. I had the letter, so I'm not sure when he said that I denied having the letter. I went on the premises because I read the letter. Anyway, to say, what do I need to do to fix this? I'm $36,000 invested in this house. I don't want to lose it. No desire to lose it whatsoever. It's savable. It's rehabable. It can be an asset to the city once again. So I immediately, the day I went in and talked to them, what do I need to do? They said, you have to secure the property. I picked up the phone while I was in their office, called my contractor, and said, secure that property. Okay, they can attest that the property has been safely secured. When you look at the picture window and the front window, that's plate glass. That's not, it kind of looks like it's open there. But that is plate glass. It is a secured property. So I secured the property, and then I came back actually, let me clarify. I was told some things that I needed to do. And I was told by a personnel of the city that don't worry about it, you got plenty of time, come back next week because you're going to have a 60-day window with this new ordinance, so that'll buy you an extra week. I'm like, okay. The people I spoke to spoke directly with Mr. McDonald. They confirmed that had happened. And then when I was preparing the documents, I came back the next week on a Wednesday. And I know he only stated 2 times. I did come back 3 times, but the personnel I was told to speak to was out of the office. It was that next Wednesday. I'm trying to get the date. 16th. And then I went back again on that Friday. And they showed me the ordinance. I have the ordinance here. They said exactly what you need to do to get the provisional permit. Knowing today, or yesterday was a holiday, I was there first thing this morning. My intention is to do the right thing. It always has been. But the roadblocks and obstacles afforded me have denied me that opportunity. And that's why I'm here before you today. I presented them everything that was in this ordinance this morning. First time I spoke with Mr. McDonald, I actually spoke to him, it was a conference call on the phone. He stated to me my 10 days had expired. It had nothing to do with trying to do the right thing or bringing him the documents. And he didn't want to hear it. But yet I had already talked to these other personnel that had communicated with him, and they're giving me this illusion of a path that I can do to right this situation. So that's why I'm very ill prepared, because at no time did I think I was going to have to speak before, people I don't know, and I'm not a public speaker, so I apologize for that.
You're doing fine.
I'm very ill prepared. The first thing I'd like to do, and please tell me when I do something wrong, is I've secured the structure. I've read the ordinance, and I do not believe in my best interest. This is a dangerous property at this time. And if someone's going to argue that it's a nuisance to the neighborhood, I'm going out this afternoon. I've taken 16 pictures of 16 different houses within a 2-block radius of this subject house, and they will look not as well kept or marginally in the balance of what I have here. So I'm not a nuisance to the neighborhood. This is unfortunately the neighborhood in which this house resides. So it's not a nuisance and it's not dangerous. I'm going to ask to take it off of the condemnation list altogether. That will afford me a fair amount of time and not an onerous amount of time of 60 days to do a major rehab, because I still fully intend to rehab the property. So my first request is to be removed from this condemnation process, so then I can go get a standard building permit. I think it's about $60, I'm guessing, versus the $345 for a supplemental or whatever the provisional, thank you, the provisional would cost. And I could be afforded a reasonable amount of time to do the work, because it is quite substantial. But even with that said, I did present the scope of work to do it in the 60 days, if that's my only opportunity. Now, I will challenge you. There's a great possibility I will be back before your courts going, it's been 60 days, we're not done, but I will show you substantial improvement. Because realistically, that's a challenge. I want to tell you what you want to hear, but I have to speak the truth. It's a big remodel. It's a big remodel. And if you'd like to look at the pictures, I didn't make copies for everybody because they're expensive, but if you can pass them around, if you care to look at them.
Sure. I drove the neighborhoods. The officer will bring them up. Thank you.
And on the back is the physical addresses of each one.
I've got it.
Okay.
Unless.
Well, just one second, just so we stick with what is assigned here. We want to thank you, and the information is admitted to the record of this hearing. And now, at this point, does the City Commission have any questions for the person or for the building official? So let's begin with you, sir. Who has questions for? Yes.
We all take agendas.
Sir.
Okay, let me make sure that I understand you correctly. Your plans are to renovate this home.
Absolutely.
And make it livable.
Absolutely.
Beginning.
As soon as I can get the permits to do so.
Okay. How long, under reasonable circumstances, how long do you think it will take you to rehabilitate this home, make it livable?
Realistically, given the time of year we're in, because there's foundation work that has to be done, and if we get inclement weather, that's a big factor, because we can't do indoor work until we stabilize the foundation. I would say 4 months is a realistic, absolute viable opportunity to turn this into, what I'm going to do is turn it into a rental property. Because I'm way upside down, I've got to recoup over time somehow, so that's the long-term objective.
But that is your plan.
Absolutely.
Can it be done, Mr. McDonough?
I've not seen the scope of work. I don't know what he's proposing to do.
One of the mics on the gun.
I've yet to see a scope of work to know what it is that he's proposing to do, to know if it's reasonable, realistic, or not. You have a brief scope of work in the file that was presented in March of 2011 by one of his designated agents, yes, the contractor that he hired. You'll also see a letter from our departments stipulating the other conditions that needed to be met. It wasn't that it didn't align with the IRC, but there were other concerns as a result of the weathering that the structure's taken. So in with that, there was a request for further documentation, which we've yet to receive. That's the only application and documentation that we have. So I wouldn't know what that scope of work is, and I don't know that it's adequate. The last scope of work indicated that it was going to be drywall repairs, install flooring, and foundation repair. And if you look at some of the images, either in the file or even that are presented, you'll see gaping holes in the floor. I mean, there's going to have to be significant electrical work. There is no heating in the home, and I have no idea what the condition of the plumbing is. I would have to assume that all of it would have to be redone. Very typical for, a new home, which can be very simple, to be built in 120 days. When we're talking about a rehab, depending on how aggressively someone takes it, I can tell you the last two properties that were up for condemnation were being done by an individual in this community, and they're doing both of those properties in under the realm of 60 days. And they're equal on par to what this is. One of them would be oak. So,
Ms. Thornton, you bought this property in 2008, and you sold it, and the person defaulted. What?
No, sir, no, sir. I'm the Emerald Capital Investments is strictly a lending company. I'm what you call a hard money.
You loaned that person money and you took it back and
yes, sir.
repossessed.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do you have a lot of properties similar to this?
I have a lot of notes.
But you maintain some of those buildings too, right?
Yes, yes. In other companies, I have several different businesses.
I don't know if you're aware, but the city has taken a much stronger view of cleaning up condemned buildings than we used to. We've been able to streamline the process because of state rules that have been passed that we piggybacked, and we're allowed to do these very quickly now. And we really want the message to get out that we aren't going to tolerate substandard structures throughout the city. We appreciate the photos you've given. I toured that neighborhood looking at yours. I don't allow any of these to come without going and looking personally at the property. And when I saw it, I noticed there had been some cleanup of the land, and the building was completely open because you hadn't closed it up yet. But my question is, in your other places, one of the things we're having a problem with is people doing work in their properties without permits. There's never been a permit issued on this property, and we're not going to encourage that either. That's not legal. Building permits are important to the safety of the occupants. There's a lot of things that concern me about that. And,
sure.
And I'm wondering why now, only when this sign goes up and you're coming down, or you coming to the city saying, I need help getting this fixed. And it seems a little late for it, in my view. And we've also got weed and debris for $568. That didn't happen overnight. We've got property taxes for this year. Tell me what you think.
Well, I mean, you can see in the history that it was foreclosed in February, and I had people trying to get a permit for it in March. So it wasn't an issue that I just turned a blind eye to it. It was only thereafter when I was so frustrated with trying to do the right thing, trying to jump all the hoops, that one person will tell you and another person will argue against. I mean, when you got the chief person saying, don't listen to my staff, read the ordinance. That's a direct quote from stated this morning. I said, but it was your staff that told me to do this and everything was going to be fine. No, it's in the ordinance. And he was actually incorrect. It's not in the ordinance that it states anything that I need to require to have bids as part of a provisional permit. I've got the ordinance right here. It says the scope, I have everything in the ordinance to save this property and to move forward. So it was surely a frustration and kind of throwing my hands up, not having a go-to course of direction. I mean,
we've also seen cases in the past, a long time ago, 0405, when it took longer, where people said, we can do this, but when they came up to the real amount it cost to rehab a unit, it stopped them cold. Do you have any idea what your total expenditures are going to be? No, go ahead.
I have a figure from my contractor for $27,236. I also have a screenshot printout from Amarillo National Bank of one of my accounts for $50,837. The cost and expense is not a factor in doing this. Compliance with the city and getting the city to support this to try to make it work has been the challenge. It's never been a monetary cost. I'm a loser on the house. It was a bad investment. Bottom line, I'm trying to salvage. I have been from the beginning. But the inability to get through to the city to get some assistance to do the right thing has been the challenge. And I have these if you'd like to see them.
Any other questions at this point?
I've got a quick question. How long have you known that you owe the city $561.68 for cleanup?
I think the last one was just sent. I knew I had owed probably $200 or $300 from the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not for.
Why would you pay it?
I assume they charge interest, is to my knowledge, so that's their business practice. If they want to charge me interest, I'm a willing and viable consumer to choose to pay that interest. If that's the issue to get this to go, I mean, I can write a check immediately.
I'm just
so you wouldn't pay it. You wouldn't pay it. I mean, you have no intention to pay it other than you'd rather pay the interest.
Well, I ignorantly assume I'll have to pay it at the end of the day. If you demo the house, or I mean, it's still going to be on me at the end of the day. And that's ignorance, of course. But I mean, I assume I'll have to pay it regardless. But yeah, part of it was in protest of the lack of cooperation with the city when I tried to do the right thing.
Mayor, may I make a comment? There is a period I'm seeing, I think, a transition where there was previous practices and the way things tended to go. And there are current practices which are quite new, quite aggressive and progressive, and a big improvement. And I can understand how there's going to be some difficult gnashing of teeth during a transition period as people understand what the expectations of the city are, but I don't think the expectations of the people of Amarillo are to go in and level a house that's in the process of being rehabbed. And so I'd like to at least talk about what our options are in terms of having strict accountability, yet allowing to move forward at this point.
I think that's a valid question. What would be an option, sir, if you wouldn't mind sitting down? I guess Mr. McDonald.
No lead.
Yeah, no lead. Mr. McDonald, certainly that's a question that flashed across my mind. Is there any allowance for this as we change over and become, as we described, and we want people to know we're going to be more aggressive about dealing with substandard structures? That's our orders to the city. The city's trying to fulfill that. Our orders come from the constituents. The people that live in these neighborhoods are sick and tired of these things going on and on and on. So we're trying to adapt to that. But is there something we can do to mitigate the quick change? And what's your view of this? You've heard several things about how your department has operated through this.
I would like to step back on a couple of points that were made. First of all, my conversation with him this morning was very direct. And in that conversation, I also said to him, I would like to help him. And I requested that he get this information to me by 1 o'clock today, prior to work session, so that I can at least have an opportunity to review to see if I couldn't offer support behind him. Instead, we're out photo documenting what everybody else is doing wrong. Second of all, he indicated that in March that his employees decided to go work on the structure, make application with an uncooperative department. And I'll tell you, the uncooperative department was there in February to say stop doing work without permit. My staff does everything they can and under strict guidance to ensure that we are civil servants and that we're here to provide a service. I told the gentleman today that I will help him. And what I've been looking for, and what my staff has told him, is that we need a defined scope of work. What is it that you are doing? And again, I'll refer back to the file that you have before you that shows the scope of work. That scope of work indicates that we're going to do drywall repair, paint, vinyl, carpet, replace windows. That is not a scope of work. It does not tell me how deep a person has to get into it. I told him today that he needs to get a hold of contractors that are going to do the work to provide me with some dollars and cents so he understands just exactly what you said, Mayor, what it is that he's getting into. Now, I'm not opposed to, we have option 3. Option 3 in the ordinance is the fact that he has the ability to provide for that scope of work, the financial means, how it is he's going to do the work in a timeline within the next 10 days. If he fails to do so, then that property moves forward. And that would be my recommendation, to allow him an opportunity to hear what it is that needs to be done, and no differently than I told him today. As a non-resident, as an owner of that property, but he does not reside in that, he's not able to do that work. He has to hire licensed professionals. Now, I can't tell you the extent of the damage that's resulted from vandals and vagrants. I cannot tell you what it is he's going to have to do to that electrical system. I can tell you that people have done work in there, they've done work illegally, and I don't know the depth of the damage below that floor. So there are a number of things that he has to prove to the city so that we can be certain in issuing the permit for work that we know that the work can be completed. And as far as the time frame, I think 60 days is reasonable. If you have a significant investment and you have the dollars that are allocated to do that work, then either you're serious about it or you're not.
So what you're saying is, it would be acceptable to you if Mr. Thornton believes he can get you the proper information in 10 days, and I'm going to ask you, once we get an answer from him, that he's clear on what he needs to get you. And then secondly, that you would be agreeable and not, we wouldn't be getting around what we're trying to produce is a movement on these substandard structures to give them 60 days to complete the project. Is that what we're asking?
That's absolutely correct. That would have been the same thing that would have happened had he responded in that initial notice. That's our purpose, is to try to rehabilitate and save these structures. So,
okay, we're going to give time for others. Go ahead.
I just have one other question. And I'll admit some ignorance about this, Mr. McDonald. When I tried to find a contractor for a roof, for a partial job, it took me 3 months to even get somebody to look at my job. So you probably have the power to get people to move on things. I don't know this gentleman's ability, but I know I have not had the ability to get contractors to respond like that. So I don't know how that works in this community. So I can't get work done that fast.
Well, and I can tell you that on a regular basis that we have those relationships around town, meaning that he has 2 different general contractors, which he's referenced to me. And I don't know that he has working relationships with both of those. He doesn't know who the subcontractors are, so he doesn't know the realm of the work. The first subcontractor submitted on his application and signed it on his behalf that the work was going to cost, I believe, $12,000. You have that document in front of you. Today, when he was in the office, he indicated that it was, I believe, $24,000 or $25,000. Then this afternoon, I'm hearing $27,000. So if you don't know who your subcontractors are, it's very difficult to know the depth of the work that you have to do. And that's why we're there. Now, he has 10 days to provide that information. So I think that's an adequate amount of time to go out and shop contractors, to call, to pick up the phone book, and call 3 electrical, 3 plumbing, 3 mechanical, 3 general contractors, and ask what is it going to cost, what's the time frame. And certainly we're willing to work with someone, and if he can get it to a point where, you know, that he's doing what it is he's supposed to do rather than this structure sitting here for years, that's all we're looking for is compliance.
Well, and I think that somebody in that business, I have a list of people that can fix cars quickly. I'm in that business. You know, you're not in the roofing business. I'd hate to call roofers because I don't know them either. But in that business, I would suggest those people should have that relationship. And the other thing that concerns me in regard to that is so many of these things are done without the proper permits. It's nearly impossible for city to catch them. We certainly don't want to endorse substandard work or not permitted or not quality work that meets the standards that we've asked to. So if we could, I'm going to ask Mr. Thornton what his thoughts are about what Mr. McDonald has just suggested. Is that okay with the committee?
One more question for Mr. McDonald. So what you're suggesting after what has been said and what we've heard today and what Mr. Thornton has said that he was going to do, you're saying option 3.
If he can provide the documentation within the next 10 days to satisfy the work that he's going to perform, absolutely.
And
otherwise, it's a condemned structure.
Mainline, item 2.
Correct.
Option 2. Now, let's say that he, let me make sure that I'm very clear of what option 3 is, and this is for Mr. Thornton's benefit as well as my personal benefit. If we go option 3, and he has 10 days to submit to you, your department, what his plans are and the related costs, and all the hoops that are required in that 10 days. Then, and you say, this is a good plan, this is acceptable. Then how long does he have to complete that work?
60 days from the date that the permit is issued.
And there's no exceptions.
There are some minor extension possibilities along with that.
And that's a call of yours.
Correct.
But if you say, no, the 60 days is gone, I don't care what you've done, we're going to be out there in 2 days with a record and tear it up, he can come to the city commission.
Absolutely. I mean,
but it doesn't automatically come back here with this new
Right.
format. Does it automatically come back?
It's in his court.
Mr. Norris, do you know?
Under number 3, it does not. I think under.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, maybe we could ask Mr. Norris. Let's read number 3, or I can do it, whichever. In fact, Marcus, tell you what, I'll read that.
Hang on just a second, Mr. Thornton. Do you have a copy of these options?
Yes, sir, I do.
Read number 3 as we do, because we're going to ask you about this in a minute.
Okay. Mayor, if the commission chose number 3, the commission is finding that the structure is a danger and orders its removal 10 days after the notice of the decision. However, we further find that good cause exists to grant a reprieve on that order to allow the interested person to seek to qualify for and obtain a provisional permit during that period being the 10 days. If the permit is obtained, then this reprieve, this grace period, continues for the duration of such permit or such successor permit. In other words, as he suggested, substantial work has been done, extenuating circumstances have prevented him from completing it. That can go back through Mr. McDonald and his group, and they say, yes, that's correct. So for the duration of the permit or the successor permit. Now, the next part, the reprieve granted under this subsection shall expire upon the later of the expiration of time to apply for and obtain the permit, so that 10 days, if he doesn't get his permit within the 10 days. If at the expiration of the reprieve, the building official finds that the defects that gave rise to this finding of dangerous structure have been abated, then your condemnation is moot. However, if they remain, then the property already has been condemned by this body, and the building official will proceed with having the structure demolished.
Mr. Thornton, I want to make sure you understand something that I understand. So, Mr. City Attorney, my view is that we don't want to strike the provisional permit, which costs you a little more money, but we don't want to strike that because we don't want this to stop the condemnation proceedings. And if we don't stick with the city ordinance with this wording, we could have to start over again. Could we not? And that was the problem in the past, is we give them a little bit of time and we'd have to start the whole thing all over again.
Well, and the other problem with the prior ordinance, Mayor, was that there was only one kind of permit, that is a building permit, which is automatically 180 days.
Okay.
You see,
So this is
a provisional permit under this proceeding is for 60 days. If the person shows substantial improvement, substantial compliance, then administratively, it may be extended for another 60 days. That's why it says or successor permit. Again, if there's good faith effort, or as the manager pointed out, extenuating circumstances, there is provision for this provisional permit to be extended beyond the 60 days.
I think it's $345.
The cost of the provisional.
Yes, $345, which is all inclusive of all, rather than an independent permit. Excuse me.
in lieu of an individual permit from each of the contractors. So ultimately, an electrical permit, a plumbing permit, a mechanical permit, a building permit. This is all inclusive, takes care of all permits.
So it could be that it's not much more expensive.
Correct, absolutely.
And a question I have, Mr. McDonald, is a person who is not a builder as a profession able to provide the data required to fulfill the needs for a provisional permit in 10 days?
Yes,
Could I do that?
We've had citizens do that, just ordinary citizens doing the work themselves. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's relatively simple. It's just a check and balance to make sure the person knows what the expenses are prior to getting into the commitment of starting it. So we don't get 3/4 of the way down the road with the amount of money and I can't do anything.
Does it also tell the owner that these are the requirements for the type of certifications needed or licenses needed to do this work currently? Because we used to not push that as hard, but we do now. So does it let him know where he stands so we don't support not just Mr. Clark, but other people in the future?
Correct. The indication that he has made application. When we had a physical application in hand in March of 2011, I mean almost 2 years ago, when we had that application in hand, we responded to him in writing, providing what it is that we needed, additional information. We had marked up the plans that he had submitted. So certainly we try to give all the information on the front side of the model of what it is that he needs to do.
Other questions on this end? Ms. Thornton? Yes. But I don't want you to think that, I mean, obviously there's some concern about being too tough on this. We will remain tough on these overall.
Sure.
We were way too lax. We couldn't get anything done in the city. Neighbors were at our doors constantly saying, why don't you take care of these structures? And we have the means to do that now, and we mean to do it. We put money in the budget to take down these things. We don't like doing that, but when owners won't pay attention, we have to. I'm not saying that as a threat. I'm saying it's just a new form of business. We have to take care of the city in a better way with substandard structures. And the state's given us the means to do that, and we are serious about it. We're also serious about the fact that Mr. McDonald's team had over 104 meetings with contractors, with people out in the field to talk about the new standards for the building permits and what's required when you put in a water heater and all that. So we've been very careful to deal with the public on that, and we just hope that everybody, and you're not the biggest fish in the sea, but you all have to figure out what it is. We're not trying to be hard-hearted. We're trying to be safe with the people that are living in these homes. And that's, I think, what this commission is pushing. Do you think that you can reasonably meet what Mr. McDonald has outlined and do that, or what should we do?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, I wish you'd find for number one that doesn't seem to be discussed at all, because I've secured the property, so therefore it no longer being a danger. If that's not an option, then in my personal opinion, I think number three is very challenging. Not that I'm not going to try to do whatever you put before me, but you yourselves have agreed that that's extremely ambitious. And with the scope of work, what challenges me is this morning in our conversation, 3 different times, Mr. McDonald stressed to me that 60 days was not a long time. And there's a lot of work that needs to go on in that house. I am swearing to you under oath, as I did when I came in here, that this was the conversation. And now it's plenty adequate amount of time. And that's a challenge for me. I'm telling you, it would be incredibly ambitious. But if there's another 60 days to fulfill that obligation, the end result's met, I assume by desire of the city, and that is to save the properties. This is not I want to tell you what you want to hear, but the truth is it would be very ambitious to do this in 60 days, given inclement weather, given this time of year, given the scope of work involved. But I do guarantee it will be done.
Well, I do want to point out that number 3 says with successor permits or whatever the wording is. In other words, if you show progress, you'll be given more time.
A direct quote said to me this morning by Mr. McDonald, I don't care if you're $20,000 into it. If that 61st day, it's gone. I'm swearing to you under oath.
Point of order. Council, can quasi-judiciary proceedings like this, can we call the question?
Not yet. We still have part of the due process. We still need to give an opportunity to see if there are any neighbors here who want to testify. There's a few more procedural steps we need to go through.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like? Any other questions at this point for Mr. Thorne? Okay, so I have a question about these options. The first option, 3, is 10 days. Does then it move to option 4 with 60 days? I'm not seeing the 60 in option 3. I'm seeing it down in number 4. Tell me how that works.
Mayor, if I might note, item number 4 is in the case where there is a permit or a recently expired permit. In other words, they have been prosecuting the work, but for some reason it has lapsed. Number 4 would not apply in this case because there are no permits.
All right, now the other thing I'm not clear on is, let's say that this commission chooses item 3. It does not come back before the commission, or it does if he fails?
It does not.
It does not if he fails?
Does not.
Unless it's under protest. In other words, Mr. McDonald makes a decision, time's up, pal. Do we there reckon to tomorrow? Then, does not Mr. Thornton have the right?
No.
Or, no?
Go to a court to do it is the only way. He would have to go to court to do that at that point, I believe. Is that not right?
Get an injunction.
Yeah, you have to get an injunction to stop it at that point. So it is serious what we're considering. It is important. I think, I'm saying this as a question more than a statement. What I'm saying is we give 10 days, or we can uncondemn it, which I'm not in favor of personally, or we can give 10 days and wish Mr. Thornton the best. And we really, if number 4 can't apply, we're really down to those options. Well, I'll do that in a minute, but we still need to talk about it. Yes, Mr. Thornton, please.
Obviously, I have a lot riding on this. For you to make these decisions is incredibly important to me. Again, I'm going to ask, I know you said you're not in favor of, you said yourself, you expedited this whole process. The ordinance has changed, so the process is a lot faster. I'm going to beg the board to do number 1 with the guys that I will not come before you again. I won't be here again. But at least that affords me a chance to get standard timeline to get the work done. And you can drive by the property and you can attest that the work's being done. And then if in this expedited process that the mayor said himself, shorten these timelines, you can bring it right back through this process and tear the thing down.
Well, I think we can't if we brought this up. What is the time limit on that, Mr. City Attorney? I think if we uncondemn it, doesn't there another provision?
Okay, the three, Mayor, may we hold for the deliberation of the options? May we do that? So complete, we'll go back to number 7. And then when we come to the place where we deliberate these, I'll be glad to walk you through.
Okay, great.
If that's acceptable.
That's acceptable. Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Okay, at this time, we're going to move to the next portion of this. And number 7. Is there any neighbor or anyone else who desires to speak on this property? Any neighbor or anyone else who desires to speak on the property? Okay, well, hearing the evidence, does number 8, excuse me. Does the building official have anything further? Pardon me.
No, sir.
Mr. McDonald, anything further? Are there any questions or comments from the City Commission? Any questions or comments from the City Commission?
I have one question for Mr. McDonald. If Mr. Thornton gets the permit that you're suggesting, that includes all the work to be done, right? And he starts work, then within the 10 days, then could he be eligible for a successor permit to give him more than 10 days?
That's of course dependent on the work that he does. What happens in the first 10 days is that affords him the opportunity to secure the bids or to know what it is that he needs to do, get the paperwork in. So in essence, he has 70 days from today if that's what you were to choose to do. That the cost of that permit also includes the certified mail that we're sending and all of these other things. So those expenses it's truly the cost that the department receives, just as a side note. But for him, if he were to make that sufficient progress, meaning that he was the majority of the way through, but because in the month of February, the first 2 weeks in February, it was sub-zero and it was snowing and blowing and he couldn't work on it, well, then why wouldn't we extend this out? However, if he chooses not to work on this project, or he can just take his time like he's working on some other project, I mean, this has been ongoing for 2 years under this current LC or LP. This property's been in ownership through one of his companies for the variety of 10, 15 years. I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and I want to help him to be successful. Nowhere in this process do I want him to lose money, nor do I want him to lose any future investment in the property. And I will help in every way that I can. I commit to you that I'm here to support him. He needs to provide and show in good faith what he's going to do. And he's going to have to provide a timeline that's adequate to do it in. And truly, that's why we came to the 60 days, to make sure that we abate these in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so what happens if he gets the 10 days, Mr. McDonald, and he gets his work done, weather or not, bad weather or not? We get to 60 days and you look at it and say that he's 60% complete on the deal. What happens then? What do you do practically then? I'm curious. I know that's a judgment call, but I'm curious.
Yeah, it certainly, there would be an awful lot of circumstances to consider, and I would do my best to be open and honest with him. The fact of the matter is there's an option to extend that permit, or if for some reason it needs to go to a conventional permit, there's an option for that as well. And the reality is as we went through this process, we worked very closely to see, knowing that we're talking about small structures or something similar to this, versus that we could be talking about a very large, complex project. That we have some commercial properties that would be more intensive, that would require some other things, or that there may be one portion of it that may not be complete. And an anomaly in that may be that heating and cooling contractor couldn't complete his work, he can't obtain a certificate of occupancy. So if we have to do something different, we certainly would. But the progress that's been made on this property hasn't shown us any good faith. And that's all we're looking for. But I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, if we needed to issue another permit, we would. Bottom line.
I've got a question for Mr. Thornton when it's time.
Sure.
You were saying at the first that you're in the business of loaning money to people to get houses, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So have you never had to repossess a house before and redo it?
I have had repossessions, but nothing like this. Usually, they're mostly through with the work and time on the market costs them, and then I take it back without actual foreclosure. It's a deed and loan process. No, this is absolutely the exception to the rules as far as the condition of the property.
Because it seems to me that it's a cost of doing your kind of business is to know how to rehab a house.
And I do. I mean, it wasn't asked. I've been a licensed general contractor for many, many years. I'm third generation carpenter. I know the ins and outs of it. But I use current licensed contractors to do the work. But I mean, yeah, I'm very intimate with the rehab process. And I assume I'll probably be doing some sweat equity as they put it, under the guise of licensed officials in this rehab to try to defer some of the costs. Again, I stress to you, I beg you, as a grown man, to not leave this up to the powers that be. I've tested it, it's failed. I'm swearing before God and everybody when I make this a testament to you. The man 5 hours ago challenged me with 60 days isn't very long. And now he's had plenty of time to have it done in 60 days. And I'm saying it's a challenge. It's incredibly ambitious. And on the 61st day, it's gone, was a direct quote. To leave it in his hands is I think, a tremendous mistake. You have the opportunity to revisit this. You can put it back in the condemnation process and demolish the house if I'm not a man of my word and I don't follow through with my promises. So it's not that you lose it if you vote number 1. It just postpones it, gives me an adequate amount of time to remedy the process, which I would be dealing with Mr. Atkinson directly at any level he'll allow me to make sure this is done. I know I feel like I'm the whistleblower and it's going to be a challenge with me in the city from here on out, but at this point, I wouldn't stuck my head in the sand, and this is where it got me. I'm not doing it again. I'm going to do what's right.
We understand you've done a lot of work on the house, or somebody has with the roof and those things. The comment that concerned me most in not being tough on this is where you felt like we didn't agree. You just didn't pay the interest. You don't really want to pay the note. You're owed that. If you had done the work, you would have had to pay a contractor. Our taxpayers end up having to take care of this, and they're supporting you. And I think it's the wrong attitude to take with us about the fees that are due on this house. That really put me off. I'll just tell you for the future, I don't like that attitude about, well, I'll just ride the city on this thing and pay the interest.
Well, I mean, it wasn't my intention that I would never pay it. I knew I would pay it because I owed it. But yeah, absolutely part of it was in protest because I felt like I was trying to do everything right and stonewalled by the city.
Well, but I think waiting till the last minute with these things is part of what the cause of miscommunication and breakdown in communication is. And again, we're going to move these things along at a rapid pace. We have to. And the properties you looked at, I'll bet you there's files on half of those.
I would assume any
at
less.
Least.
Sure. But as far as the waiting to the last minute, I mean, there's a due diligence process. That's why they give you the timeline. 2 days after I received the letter. So I understand the office.
Your secretary had that.
Not my secretary, sir. I'm sorry.
Not my problem.
Okay.
If I get the mail delivered, then get a P.O. box that you go clear out yourself if you don't want this to happen in the future. Because if you can't rely on your secretary to deliver your mail, that's not our fault. It's not his fault. It's not anyone here's fault. It's the fault of the system you set up, not ours.
It was just a lady that worked in another office.
I don't care who it is. If you don't like that, go set up a P.O. box where you clear the P.O. box.
Well, I'm just saying, 2 days after it was acknowledged to me, I was in
that part is your problem, not ours. I mean, do you agree?
No, sir.
Do you think that it's our problem that you have a secretary that didn't deliver your mail? Sorry.
I don't have a secretary.
Whoever
that works
who
in another
signed
office.
for it?
And we all have the same
signed for it?
offices.
Who signed for it?
Heather Essman. She works in another office.
Well, then I talked to her about
I did.
It's not our problem. You're saying that's our problem.
No, I'm just sharing with you that 2 days after I was made aware of the letter, I was in the city.
Why do we send it registered?
I understand.
Okay. Okay, the hearing, the evidence is now closed. The commissioners must now publicly deliberate our decision. We must weigh the following factors: validity of the alleged violation, the severity of such violations, and any corresponding danger to the public. Also, take due regard of private property rights of the owner, fair opportunity for a legally interested person to have been notified of the problems, and the opportunity to repair, remediate, or remove the dangerous structure, or the accumulation of excess vegetation, junk, and debris. We may also weigh the private property interests of the neighbors who may be affected by any further delay or deterioration of the subject property. Finally, we may consider any other relevant facts that may be unique to this circumstance or this case. And now, at this point, we'd like to deliberate that among the commissioners.
And Mayor, I'll be glad to outline some of those options.
Please do.
I think deliberations.
I think it would help.
Your first option under the ordinance and under the evidence that you've now heard back and forth is to decide that as of today, now not when this began, but as of today, that the structure is not dangerous to the public, and it has been secured, and it does not have electricity that would cause a fire. We've heard testimony from the building official that there is no electrical or water service to it. You could decide under the evidence that it is not a danger, it's not marked by accumulation of vegetation, debris, or trash, and dismiss this current filing. Your second option is to review the evidence and to conclude that even though the structure has been secured, it nonetheless remains a dangerous building. The deterioration of the foundation and other structural defects that you saw pictures of, heard evidence of, in order its removal within 10 days. That is your second option. So the first option is you conclude, while it may have been a dangerous building at one point, at this moment it is not a dangerous building, and dismiss the case. The second option is to find that it is a dangerous structure and order its removal within 10 days. Your third option, find that the structure is a danger, order its removal within 10 days, but to grant a reprieve, which would give Mr. Thornton 10 days to apply for and obtain a provisional permit, followed by 60 days, which is the length of the provisional permit, to do the work. As pointed out in the debate, if he's made substantial progress or there are other extenuating circumstances, the building official may extend that provisional permit. Let's be optimistic. If he's made substantial progress, the building official may, at the conclusion of the provisional permit, issue him a regular building permit. Give him 6 months to wrap up the job because he's shown good faith in steadily prosecuting the work. That is a possibility under the ordinance. As already mentioned, the fourth option on your menu is not applicable to the circumstances of today's hearing. Based on the photographic evidence, I would suggest that the fifth option, removal of excess weeds, trash, and rubbish, is also not applicable to the case today based on the photographic evidence, but that's your call. I'm glad to answer any further questions about that.
Thank you, Mr. Questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Certainly.
Question to council, because I'm in the process of making a motion to move this action further. Can we put a provided provision in there that is, because within 10 days, the 2012 taxes will be due February the 1st or January the 31st. Can we put a provision in there that these taxes must be paid and these charges that have been accumulated for mowing and cleaning up and all that, that they also be paid within this 10 days?
I think you can, Mayor, because it comes to order, Commissioner. In order to obtain just think that through, in order to obtain the provisional permit, one of the things that Mr. Thornton will be required to demonstrate is the financial capability to pay for this scope of work. It's not a lot of emphasis today on the scope of work, but under the ordinance, he must also show the financial responsibility, the financial capability to prosecute the work, not just have lofty aspirations and a plan with no money. So to require payment of taxes due and what we call weed liens that the city has for removal of weeds, trash, and mowing, I think would be part of a good faith effort to establish his eligibility for provisional permit. Did I answer it?
Yeah. Are you ready for a motion, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, we're ready for a motion.
I would move for option 3, and this is in the name of understanding what you're having to say, Mr. Thornton, but also we have a responsibility to our community. I've been sitting on this commission now for 8 years. And only recently have we gotten to a way or a process to move these things along, but they're not just out there forever and ever and ever. And I feel certain we made a leader out of you. I think Mr. McDonald has observed enough of this process that I think he'll be more than fair with you. I have that much faith in Mr. McDonald, and I know him a whole lot better than I do you. So if you don't take that as an exception, I've just worked with him, and he's a fair man. And if he's not, I'm big enough to accept that charge. But in the name of all that are concerned, and also because of the taxes and the weed liens that are due on this house, I would move for approval of option 3. And within these 10 days that you pay the taxes, and they're not past due. They're not due until the 31st of January, but they will be due. And these other charges for mowing, trash, and weed removal and all that. So that's my motion.
Okay. Do we have a second to that motion?
I second that motion.
Okay, as part of the discussion of that motion, I would like to say, Mr. Thornton, I was pleased when I went by that property weeks ago and saw the lot cleaned up. And certainly there has been some effort. We don't doubt that. We, I think, are trying to find a way to move along and still accommodate. And I would also say that your attitude about this is 100 times better than we see from most people with substandard structures. I wish you success. I hope that this works. And I think I would hope that you'd open up to the building people who have a tough job, just like you do. They got a tough job. Open up to allow them to prove your concerns Bill placed. I see our building people to be very helpful to people. I get that comment often. You're in an adversarial position with them, there's no doubt. Please give it a chance to work. Certainly you can call, as Jim said, you can call us back, but I don't think you'll need to. I think you'll find Mr. McDonald and his staff working. Now, you may not have felt that up to this point, but I hope that we can say later that you change your mind about that. And that's, I think, the attitude you'll see from this commission. We're not trying to impose too much on you, and I think you have to be commended on what you've done so far. It is a difficult situation. So I'd say that as a comment to the other discussion.
Other than the fact that something could be worse, this is the first exception that we have taken that I can remember. All the rest of them we said tear it down.
But you're also the first person to come here with some valid concerns and valid, plans. We don't know the validity yet, but you sure are working towards it. So we wish you luck. Whatever we do, I don't think this commission wishes you any ill will, nor I think does the building people. I know you don't agree that yet, but I'm hoping in 60 days you'll change your mind. So we'll call a question. All those in favor of the option number 3, as Commissioner Sims stated, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Is your daddy George Thornton?
Billy Thornton.
And
you have to say humbly for the record, the cleanup on the property is part of the debt I owe you. It wasn't for my doing. It was the city that did the cleanup on the property. But I'll pay it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, well, this matter is now concluded. The city manager is directed to take all steps necessary to inform interested parties of the outcome of the hearing, their appeal rights, and to implement this resolution. Thank you all for your participation. Okay. Consent agenda. It's recommended the following items be approved and the city manager be authorized to execute all documents necessary for each transaction. A is the award of water distribution improvements, replacement of the water main. There are no other items. Is there any? There's no need to remove this. Is there any discussion about this item?
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second. Is there any discussion from the audience or from the commission about this item? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. That concludes the, are we going back to session after this? Okay. That concludes the agenda for today's meeting. So our customary at this time for the, to allow citizens of the community with matters not on the agenda pertaining to city policy, programs, and services to speak to the commission. And the floor is open to such comments. Would anyone like to come forward and make a comment? We encourage that. Sir, please come forward. If you don't mind, if you can state your name and address, we'd like to keep these comments to 3 minutes. Oh, we will. Don't worry. After you finish, your address is when they push the button.
Okay.
So we're okay.
I appreciate that, Paul.
Thank you.
My name is Greg Sheets. I'm from Southern California. I've been traveling the nation for the last 11 years, speaking at city council meetings about some very evil issues conspiring. I've been working with the federal government. Rick T. from...
Sir, we need to ask you for an address.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm from Southern California.
So give a street address, please.
532 Linden Way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's your zip code?
92835.
And where? What city in Southern California?
This is in Fullerton.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My birthplace. Good. So anyways, what we're going to start out with is, I'm picking this back up. I left it alone for a while, but I've been taking this city to city. It's also documented with the FBI. Rick Totten is one of the leads that I got with Utah, Salt Lake City. Great guy. I'm going to apologize to the council. These people on here are my family members. My dad gapped Air Force, or he gapped telephone poles in the Air Force. I believe they're involved in this conspiracy. This is going to the General Attorney's Office in Santa Ana, which is all federal charges. So we're not going to address this too much. I'd just like to say to my Aunt Loretta out there that I hope she gets what she's got coming to her. She's a school teacher, now protecting children from any kind of a nuclear blast on schoolyards. Very disrespectful. Let's move to the next page. This is my pet peeve. Relay stations in the hills. I was on a bus for about 33 hours in Texas, and you've got a lot of them in the hills. The Rocky Hills, but what you got is methamphetamine coming out underneath CC antennas. Now, this is not your average civilian running these things. This is government labs. I've already gotten a few police officers to agree with me back home. Meth creates suicide. It's the heaviest rate suicide. It's death. Overdose is heavy with it as well. If you get a plasma tip, P2P, crossed over ammonia tip, tomahawk missile tip, P2P, 55-gallon drums in these relay stations, you got gas that'll kill everybody, liquefy your lungs. I wouldn't want to see that happen to you, Paul. You seem like a nice guy. All the charges are down here as well, the DNA facts of these people involved. Let's move on. This is how the cocaine's getting into our country through our Navy fleet. Then it goes to England trucking. I don't appreciate England trucking, especially since I believe in King Arthur and King Richard watching over me. I've got high regard for English kings that I think still remain. They're the ones that could get me if you don't do the right thing in your first time of life. And we're getting to that mortality thing through the DNA. And then it goes to refrigeration trucks. It's got to be hauled at 61 degrees or else the toxic strength will go on it. But I'm doing my best with these telephone poles. A lot of people out there rooting for me on this. Once again, I apologize for my family. I've talked to the FBI. If they are involved in this through the DNA facts, they will go to federal corrections, lose their property, pensions will be seized, and it will create a domino factor. And I'm talking about the installers. These installers know that these, I don't know if you guys have ever looked up mercury chromite. You might want to look it up on your Google. And mercury zomite, some pretty wicked stuff. I appreciate the yeah, have a great day.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment? Welcome, sir. If you could give your name and address, please.
James Skank, 4217 Summit. You know, you guys have a hard job sometimes. Let me cut to the chase here. Up here about this cell phone ban.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the ordinance number 7366. And I'm just up here to really clarify where we're at. I'm involved with a loosely group of people who have put together a petition signing you're probably aware of. And we've got over 3,000 and working on the number. And I'd like to know, if we could, the exact number, how many is actually needed. I don't know who I actually talked to. That's you, Francis. Okay, and maybe you can give me that number afterwards or something. Well, I know we've got to come. Somebody said 3920, but it was only 14,000 and 25%. That's about 3,700. But I don't want to big roll it. You're saying 3920. Okay. And what's the exact date that they're due to present? Do we present them to you?
Yes, sir. You're going to be in our office by February 1st.
By February 1st, sometime that day, you're going to be there. Okay. And you're the one that gets them. Are you the one that's in control of the process of looking them over and doing the whole thing? Okay. That's good, because that's where we're at, and want to at least make things aware. Okay, and I just want to speak to you guys. It's obviously distracted, but you want to cut the time off for a minute? Okay. Watch my back.
We're watching.
Watch my back. I just want to let you know, I've personally gathered probably 250 signatures. Each one of them have been people that I've talked to about their concern about the cell phone issue, the cell phone ban. And I was giving you in a nutshell of what I've seen and heard. Very few have said, oh, I'm completely for that, leave it alone. Most have had their objection to the fact that they didn't get to vote on it. Because something that is as broad-reaching as this, that affects every person that comes to this town, everybody's driving around, is a broad issue. And it would be able to be put on the ballot so that y'all would have a true consensus of what people actually say. And so the reality is you possibly, because we will have the number of signatures, hopefully even more, because we have about 40 businesses in town that have it going on. I talked to no one really, even people that said I'm for it, they said I still think it should be voted on. Okay, and that's even what you talked about, Mayor, when you said, you know, you can get a petition and do this kind of thing. So we are. And my question would
Time
would be to consider.
Go ahead. You have a few seconds.
Okay.
No,
it just keeps beating, and then
sure. Go ahead.
You know, as you get older, your train of thought is disrupted.
I understand that very clearly.
Probably my phone ringing. Is that y'all have the option, I believe, just like when we're dealing with this ordinance that y'all are dealing with, is you can put off February 3rd and move it to past May and put this on the ballot so that the public can vote on it. We'll have multiple signatures that will show you that they want to do that. So,
sir, what I'd ask you to do after the meeting is possibly talk to our city manager or city secretary, because I think there's some lack of clarity about the dates and what's required. I just ask you to.
Oh, I would love to, because, like I said,
were you one of the organizing group that brought the petition?
No.
They were instructed, so you might talk to them.
I don't have, and I have, and it is very.
I'm going to ask if we could take this after the meeting. I'd be happy to meet with you.
Okay, cool.
But I mean, the point is that those people have the instructions about how to do this.
I have the instructions that we're dealing with. I was just trying to clarify the exact numbers because we did have some.
We just need to keep the time limit pretty standard for everybody. So I'd ask you. We would certainly be happy to talk to you afterwards. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else that has a comment today? If not, we'll move back to session. And is this is open session at this point? Work session, or are we going into executive session? We're going into executive session. Thanks for the clarification.